Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Open Look podcast. It is season number 2. We are back, Mr. Dave. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's been a while. Ready to roll.
Yeah, folks, we missed you guys. If this is your first time joining us here at the Open Look podcast, just a quick refresher of what we do. We're your two favorite basketball analysts. We tell it how it is. Nobody pays us, so we can be as honest as we like, and we don't have to worry about China coming after us. How about you, Dave?
I don't want to talk about it.
I think Dave might have some Chinese connections we might offend. Keep my mouth shut. But then again, we are that basketball podcast where you can expect us to tell it how it is. We don't pull any punches. That's the Open Look podcast. That's what people love us for. You want to definitely follow us. You want to hit that subscribe button down below, somewhere down there. That way, you'll get to see all of our videos firsthand as soon as they drop. Definitely want to hit that bell icon, too. If you're listening to us on podcast, you already know. Just follow us on all of your favorite podcast platforms. We're talking about iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it, we're there. And we definitely would love to join you on your commute. This is the first of a 3-part series, our season preview, long-promised season preview. It's been a nice, long off-season. Dave and I have been really excited to get started again. So, Dave, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it, man. Let's just go ahead and talk about the off-season, a little bit of last season, just kind of see where we left off. Who were your best teams from last season?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're probably guessing, or you're probably already saying, oh, he's going to be very conservative. But I will tell you, I picked 2 of them. I definitely thought the Bucks were one of the best teams from last year. I thought they had the best record. They were up 2-0 in the Eastern Conference Finals. Giannis Antetokounmpo then had a switch on defense, and Kawhi Leonard kind of locked them down from there, and it became a 4-2 loss. But what I loved about them was they were able to get a lot of nice pieces, plug in some guys. Brook Lopez turned out to be amazing for them. Giannis was the MVP. They have a fantastic coach in Mike Budenholzer. He came from Atlanta. So they were one of the best teams. And then, of course, it goes without saying, the Golden State Warriors. I mean, they went to their 5th consecutive NBA Finals. I think you can probably argue that if all of their guys were healthy, that it was very possible they might have won the NBA Finals. They breezed through the Western Conference without KD for most of it. But again, the tragic injuries is what cost them. Obviously, Clay going down with a torn ACL and Kevin Durant going down with one of the worst injuries ever in the Achilles kind of cost them from there. But those were the best teams. They were the best in the Western Conference. They were the best in the Eastern Conference. Certainly were the best teams last year.
Yeah, I have no argument about any of the teams that you mentioned there, but there's one team that I think surpassed expectations last year, and that was Denver. Denver was a really good basketball team last year, built around Nikola Jokic. That team, really fun to watch, great on the defensive end, very well coached, just like you mentioned, with the Bucks and Mike Budenholzer. They couldn't make it out of a great Western Conference. They ran into a tough team in the playoffs, and they just couldn't go all the way. But that's a team that I loved watching. But going back to your point, Golden State, that was a team that got very unlucky. And my question with Golden State, and I mentioned this several times over the course of the last year, did the long runs in the playoffs eventually catch up to them? I think that's what if you look at the injuries, a lot of muscle injuries, a lot of tendon injuries, and eventually we'll have Chris back on the show here, our resident medical expert here, to talk about those injuries. But it's something that I discussed throughout the year last year when talking about the Warriors, that eventually that long run going deep into the playoffs was going to catch up to them. What do you think of that?
Speaks volume about LeBron James. Tell you that much. The man went, 8 consecutive NBA Finals, so and was able to play in all of them and really not have a kind of like a real serious injury. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, some people are, you go to the NBA Finals 5 times, you're deep into June, you're expected to be back on the court in October, and, you're playing, 8 months, 9 months out of the year. It's tough. And I think that the Kevin Durant issue is debatable of whether he should have returned. He did have a quad injury before that. Obviously, Clay had an issue with his ankle before he went down with the ACL. And you kind of, when it comes to that time, really kind of take all of the medical advice and put it on the back burner and you try to play it out. But I mean, Steph Curry was great, for them. Draymond Green played fantastic. They both went to the 5 NBA Finals. But yeah, I think the injuries definitely caught up to them, and it was just a tragic end to a really good dynasty, in my opinion.
Well, it happens to everyone. It ends for everyone. The Toronto Raptors, of course, the NBA champs. The finals end. And if you guys haven't seen our season recap from the end of last year, the link is definitely in the description down below. Definitely do check that out, where we go a lot further in depth about the finals and the offseason. But moving on to the offseason, Dave, what was your best move of the offseason?
Well, you might be surprised, but I'm going to go and I'm going to tell you about the New Orleans Pelicans. Believe it or not, trading Anthony Davis for the guys that they got. When you talk about what they got Brandon Ingram, they got Lonzo Ball, they got Josh Hart, they got 3 first-round draft picks. They ended up with the best player in college in Zion Williamson with the first pick of the draft. So the balls kind of just went their way. They drafted Jackson Hayes. They drafted Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and you're going to hear a lot of this kid. And they drafted another guy named Nicolo Melli, who was in Europe. They also were able to bring in some very nice veteran help. Who are they? Derek Favors, JJ Redick. This is a great way for this team to rebuild after giving up probably a once-in-a-lifetime player in Anthony Davis. This was the best-case scenario for them to make trades and to get as much as they possibly can. Oh, and by the way, they've got an all-star guard named Drew Holiday, who's pretty good. So they did everything right. I thought they picked up the pieces extremely well. There was always, if you're a Laker fan or if you've heard about the Lakers, you heard about this potential that Brandon Ingram had and Lonzo Ball had. And Josh Hart is a nice two-way player, very complimentary type of guy. I think that those guys could end up playing better. Why? Because they're in a small market team. They're not as scrutinized as they would be with the Lakers. This is a really, really nice constructed basketball team. And you have to give the credit to David Griffin because he really put together quite a basketball team. And they have a very good coach. I mean, Alvin Gentry is no, dude off the block. I mean, this guy could coach. They're exciting. They're probably one of the best teams that I thought made the best offseason move. So
I'm with you, but I'm going to take a page out of your book and go with the easy move, the easy selection here. And that's got to be Kawhi Leonard to the Clippers. I mean, is there a bigger shift of the balance of power in the league that we've ever seen since this move or before this move? You're talking about the best perimeter defense that we've probably ever seen in the history of this league on paper. You're looking at Patrick Beverley, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George defending on that perimeter. Tell me who can score against these guys. Oh, and they can shoot. They can score. They have big guys coming off the bench. They've got depth. They've got everything. They've got the recipe for a championship team. And as a Laker fan, it pains me to say that, especially when we as the Lakers have so much talent. Pains me to see this happening right across the hall from us in Staples Center. I don't really like what is going to happen if things play out in the Clippers' favor. But it's hard to ignore that move as being the best. And again, that's something that we went over in depth during the offseason, and the link will be in the description for that video below. Dave, you can't ignore what these guys have done.
The Clippers are lucky. They got this really good executive. I'm sure you know what his name is. And he knows how to get players, and he knows how to bring them in. He's brought in a Shaquille O'Neal before to the Los Angeles Lakers. He's able to make a draft day steal, robbery, theft, whatever you want to call it. Vlade for Kobe. I mean, you can't call it any better than that. He lured Kevin Durant to come play for a team that had won 73 games the year before. He was able to get Kawhi Leonard because Kawhi Leonard wanted Paul George to be there. I mean, they did a fantastic job, but it's the league is really, really even now. I mean, there's so many good teams. So yeah, I think the Clippers made a great move, but an overall haul of what took place, the Pelicans did a fantastic job, as many other teams did.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. The league is going to be very wide open this year. That's something we're going to discuss at length throughout the rest of this mini series that we have here of our season preview. Dave, moving past the best moves, tell me what you thought was the worst move of the offseason.
Well, if you know me and you've watched these shows, you know how much I think about when it comes to the Phoenix Suns. And I'm just going to rail on them again. Because here's what they did. They signed Ricky Rubio to 3 years, $51 million. 3 years, $51 million. Do the math, mathematicians. That's a little bit over a shade of about $18 million a year. They signed Kelly Oubre Jr. to 2 years, $30 million. That's $15 million a year. Then they signed Frank Kaminsky at 2 years, $10 million a year.
Hey, Dave, you know what's funny about that Kelly Oubre deal? They did not want him in that trade in the first place last year.
That's right. And here's the other thing, John, and this is the thing that's really mind-boggling. They gave up on Josh Jackson. They literally traded him for next to nothing to Memphis. They traded for Dario Saric, who he could be a decent basketball player. I'm not sure. He hasn't proven it. He's already been traded several times. I'm not really sure. But I feel like the front office has no sense of direction, no identity. And here they are. They've got this young stud named Devin Booker. And you could argue Devin Booker is just a straight-up shooter. He doesn't do much after that. And I would know because I've had him on a fantasy basketball team. And he really doesn't rebound. He doesn't assist. He just shoots. He's almost like J.R. Smith, but a little bit better. They just don't have an idea what they're doing. They have no idea. Even from last year when they signed Trevor Ariza for $15 million for 1 year. I mean, I understand you want to pay the guy, but I mean, make it at least something that makes sense. But to sign Oubre and Kaminsky and Rubio when you're a full rebuild basketball team, and then you traded away the number four pick in Josh Jackson for next to nothing. They just don't have a clue, man.
But to be fair, was there a market for Josh Jackson?
You know what? He didn't pan out good. And you know, the sad part about it is they haven't really drafted really well. It's kind of a hit or miss with them. I mean, you could talk about Dragon Bender if you want. There's several other guys that they have. Alex Len is another guy that they had. Hasn't panned out very well. They don't draft extremely well, but they've gotten lucky with Devin Booker. And we still don't know what last year's draft choice is going to look like. But they haven't done well, and they have really no sense of – I mean, I'd rather spend money on better players. But Ricky Rubio, 3 years, $51 million, this guy, I don't know if he's worth all that. I mean, maybe, you know, this past summer is a glimpse of what he could be. But they have no idea what they're doing, and I definitely don't think the Phoenix Suns did anything extravagant.
Yeah, you look at it in the leadership there. They've got a GM by committee situation where they got James Jones and a couple other guys running the organization there. You need an old head there, kind of like Jerry West, who you alluded to earlier, who can be a leader in that front office, and they don't have that. You look at the players that they're drafting, they don't seem to have a system that they're drafting to. They don't have any sense of direction, and that's something that a couple teams in the league, like we used to make fun of Atlanta and say that they had nowhere that they were going, but that team kind of, you know, blew it up, and you see that they're building to a direction. You can see what they're doing. If you look at what Phoenix is doing, I don't know who has a clue what's going on there, and it's sad because that's a once proud franchise, but they have a notoriously cheap owner who, you know, kind of wants to do everything on a shoestring budget. It's just a shame because I really don't know who is leading that franchise, who the leadership figure is in that front office. I'm going to go with a different direction here as far as what I thought the worst trade deal. And this is going to be a controversial opinion, a bit of an unpopular opinion. But I thought the Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook trade was bad for both sides. When you look at it on Houston's side, Russ and James Harden, people are going to say, oh, it worked great in Oklahoma City. What people forget is that Kevin Durant was the alpha dog on that team. Everyone deferred to him. James Harden has been the alpha on that team for the longest time. Russell Westbrook, as we know, is the most alpha player in the league. He is very difficult to play with sometimes. How long is it going to take for those two guys to butt heads and things to just fall apart? And we look at Mike D'Antoni. He was forced to fire his entire staff. He's basically coaching with a coaching staff that he didn't pick. That's a very unique thing in the NBA. I don't see this turning out well for Houston. We look at it on the OKC side. Chris Paul is getting old and he's way overpaid. They are very hamstrung as far as their cap situation. Granted, Oklahoma City is not a free agent destination. Maybe the trend was bucked when Paul George stayed, but we saw what happened with Paul George. He got out of town 1 year after he signed his deal. That situation, I mean, Chris Paul, they're going to be lucky to get 40, 50 games out of him. I mean, how often does he play a full season? I don't even remember the last time he did that, if ever. So, I mean, that's a situation. You got Billy Donovan coaching that team. He's dead man walking. Everyone knows that, you know, as soon as they start slipping up, he's going to be shown the door. I don't know. Give me something positive about this deal, Dave, because I don't see it.
I mean, we don't know how Russell Westbrook is going to play with James Harden. I mean, we don't have a clue, really. And yeah, I don't think OKC really did anything. But I mean, I know there's some teams that are really very interested in having a Chris Paul. They do have Danilo Gallinari, who was at the last year of his deal, so they kind of get some cap relief. They're trying to move Steven Adams, but their asking price is ridiculous right now. May have to come down just a tad. They're going to need to hoard picks. I mean, kind of like the way they've already done. You know, they're hoarding a lot of picks. They've got I think 5 of them from the Clippers and another, I don't know, some from the Rockets or something like. I have no idea, but yeah, it's. I hate to say this, but yeah, it could be disastrous for both teams. But I think Houston has the upside, regardless of the fact. I mean, they get a very athletic guy and a younger guy, and I'd rather pay that money to Russell Westbrook than to pay for Chris Paul, who can't get it out, can't even make the playoffs because he's got some hamstring or knee or wrist or whatever problem that he has. So I could see that argument. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I look at Houston in particular, and like I said, they had a lot of chemistry problems last year. And you'd say, oh, they got rid of the main problem in Chris Paul. But I mean, I see some things with Mike D'Antoni there that, you know, the writing is kind of on the wall as far as I'm concerned. I don't see that turning out very well. But let's again switch gears here, Dave. And folks, if you like what you're hearing from us, please make sure that you subscribe. We're going to be giving you guys a lot of great content this year, and you don't want to miss it. But Dave, we're going to move on to who you think improved the most. And I'm going to go ahead and start out on the front foot with this. The team that I was really, really impressed with this offseason was the Utah Jazz. Mike Conley, that is a big move. You had Ricky Rubio running point for that club last year. He is not nearly as good as Mike Conley, in my opinion. And I think along with Spider Mitchell, along with Joe Ingles, the playmaking there is really special. I think that Utah has the potential. And Bojan or Bojan. How do you say it?
Bojan Bogdanovic.
I'll try saying it 10 times. I don't think I'll get it right a single time. But Bojan Bogdanovic. I think I got it that time.
Right.
Yeah, Bojan Bogdanovic, one of the most underrated players in our league. Real special player. Did a great job with Indiana last year when Victor Oladipo went down, and got him on a pretty good deal for his level of production. That team's going to be dangerous. They're going to be a problem in the West. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but I like what Utah did a lot.
I think Utah did a fantastic job, and I'll touch on them at another time. But yeah, absolutely. They've got a lot of really nice pieces. And of course, you could argue that losing Derek Favors in replace of Bojan Bogdanovic, we don't know. You're not sure what you're going to get yet, but they certainly got an upgrade at point guard. I mean, there's no question Mike Conley Jr. is one of the best players in this league, and he's been like that, barring any injuries. He could be a big factor for them. Could have a very nice relationship with Mitchell. So, but believe it or not, the team that improved the most is the team that really didn't do as much. It's the Denver Nuggets. I loved everything that the Denver Nuggets did, and they did it under the radar, such as they brought back the identical team. They picked up Millsap's option. They didn't need to. They did. They traded for Jeremy Grant, and I'm not sure anybody even realized that they traded for Jeremy Grant at all, but this was more of like a dump that OKC needed to do to kind of facilitate a trade or even have any type of space or whatever the case may be. They traded for Jeremy Grant. That guy is solid. He can play absolutely great for them. And then they drafted a kid named Bobo. He's got some upside. Yeah, he was drafted late, but he might be a really good basketball player. We're not sure yet. And then they drafted a guy the year before that named Michael Porter Jr. Now, Michael Porter Jr., not a lot of people know the story about Michael Porter Jr. He had back issues, and it was one of the reasons that it actually cost him being the number 1 pick of the draft just a year back. So Michael Porter Jr. is healthy now. This guy can play. If you haven't watched any of them, I suggest you look him up on YouTube, Michael Porter Jr., and you'll see what type of player we're talking about. This guy's about to enter his rookie season because of that NBA rule, which I will never understand. If he's injured, he not considered a rookie, blah, 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 but he's getting paid. I don't want to talk about it because the NBA kind of gets a little bit political. But in any case, Michael Porter Jr. is about to play his rookie season. He is spectacular. This was a guy that they knew could be good if he's healthy. Well, he's healthy now. And then, of course, they got a great coach, an absolute gem of a coach. This guy doesn't get enough credit for what he's done. They were second last year in the playoffs. I'm sure they've learned a ton about the playoffs when they were exited by the Trailblazers in the second round. This is a team that I think has MVP candidate Nikola Jokic on that basketball team. They just extended Jamal Murray out there. They have Gary Harris, who's already signed with them for a good amount of money. Will Barton is solid, and they just have a lot of really good bench players. I just like everything about the Denver Nuggets. They did everything under the radar. They're going to be spectacular as a basketball team. They had what I thought, and this is a team that's cash strapped too, a very good off season.
I can't argue with your logic here. Could the question be asked, though, did they do enough?
Based on what happened in the Western Conference, I think that, Jamal, you could argue that Gary Harris, Jamal Murray, and Nikola Jokic is the big three. You could argue that. And don't discount Paul Millsap at all.
Here's my concern with the Nuggets. Ever since last year, I've been singing their praises from the mountaintop. My concern with the Nuggets is consistency, because we saw it in the playoffs and all throughout the year when we're talking about Gary Harris and Jamal Murray. The issue was consistency with those guys. Do you think that they have what it takes to put it together for a whole season?
I think that they learned a lot last year. Look, every year was a learning curve for them. So the year before that, they lost in the last day of the season to the Minnesota Timberwolves, which had Jimmy Butler at the time, and they didn't make the playoffs. Last year, they were the second seed in the playoffs. In fact, they were the first-place team most of last year until they kind of conceded toward the end. They got better. Technically, they brought back the same team. They've got the same coach. Mike Malone is still the best at what he does. And you figure that all those guys just got seasoned and got better. Now, Jamal Murray's going to have to play like the contract that he signed over the summer. So you're going to get improved play from him. Nikola Jokic, you already know what he brings. So I think the Denver Nuggets, they've made the best.
All right. Well, with that, let's go on and talk about who we thought got worse. Go for it.
The team that got the worst was the Charlotte Hornets, everyone. And please don't argue with me other than that. Of course.
Hold on. They were already garbage last year. How much worse can you get?
Well, no, I mean, look at it this way. Look, they were kind of like hovering, I think, 11th seed or 10th seed or whatever it was. They were actually kind of close at some point. But when you lose Kemba Walker and you replace him with Terry Rozier, who signed, by the way, a 3-year, $58 million deal, and for all your mathematicians, that's somewhere around $18 million a year. They made 0 moves in the free agent market. They haven't drafted well in God knows how long, and I can name you a few guys: Dwayne Bacon, Malik Monk, Miles Bridges, Cody Zeller, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. They haven't drafted well. They've been bad. I can't even name the starting 5 if you ask me to. And they're over the cap, by the way, and I expect them to be dead last in the East. And Michael Jordan, the player, definitely not Michael Jordan, the executive, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, they go from bad to worse. The thing is, you look at what that team, just like Phoenix, they just don't seem to have a direction. And now you got Mitch Kupchak running things. I don't know if he's trying to clear the board here to start over. If he is, good for them, because that's a franchise that those of us who grew up in the 90s, everyone was wearing the Charlotte Hornets jackets, the Charlotte Hornet starter jackets. We all loved that franchise growing up. But
by the way, John, that's probably the best move that they've made in the past 20 years was change their name from the Bobcats to the Hornets.
I can't argue with that, man. And for those of us nostalgic folks who still want to see the Sonics come back to Seattle, that's just kind of where it is now. They've never been a very successful franchise, but I hope that they get things on track and they have a plan that they want to stick to. I think that will go a long way for helping that franchise. Again, it's not a big free agent destination, but there are a lot of guys in the league who would love to play for Michael Jordan. Everyone grew up idolizing Mike. I can see that being a way for them to attract some players, but you got to have a groundwork there. You got to have something for people to work with. And if you're just hot garbage every year like they are, never going to happen.
John, they're over the cap. They're over the cap, and they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, this is the worst run franchise in them and the Phoenix Suns. They win.
Yeah, I have a hard time arguing with that. And I think Michael Jordan kind of gets a pass sometimes because of his equity as a player. But as an executive, he's just been terrible. He has not been very good. From drafting Kwame Brown to Adam Morrison to, just terrible move after terrible move. And, you got to feel for – I don't say you got to feel for Mike because, the man's a billionaire and it's hard to feel sorry for billionaires. But I hope they get it together, just out of for nostalgia's sake. For me, though, I don't think it's any fault of their own, but I think Toronto is going to plummet a little bit. They lost the best player in the league. They lost the best player in the league from last year, and you can't recover from that. They're not going to be as good as they were last year, and they're not going to be nearly as high up in the standings as they were. Especially with the top of that Eastern Conference getting so much better. You look at Philly, you look at Milwaukee, you look at Indiana, you look at Brooklyn. All those teams are better than Toronto. And you can argue that there are other teams that are better than Toronto. It's going to come down to how Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Fred Van Vliet comes good. Kyle Lowry, they just extended him for a lot of money. That was just a head scratcher. As soon as I saw that, I texted you. I was like, what are they doing? But, yeah, I don't see how Toronto gets to where they were. And the spirit of the question here is who got worse? They got worse, plain and simple.
I think I have to agree with you, John. I definitely think that they're going to have to rely on Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby. I also don't agree with Kyle Lowry, but I think they're moving at for trade bait. But we'll find out what happens. And we don't know what Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka bring. They're older now. But, yeah, I can definitely see that the Toronto Raptors may not be as good. They're definitely not going to be as good as they were last year, for sure.
Well, what do you know, folks? I think this is the first time on The Open Look where Dave and I are going to close an episode agreeing with each other.
We'll wait to the next one.
Yeah, trust me. Parts 2 and 3 are not going to go as smoothly. Folks, thank you so much for watching episode 1 of our season preview. Be sure to subscribe right down below. Hit that bell icon. Make sure you subscribe because parts 2 and 3, you're going to see some fireworks. We're going to go at each other, and you're going to love every minute of it. Also, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at The Open Look Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at The Open Look Pod. Any way you want to get in touch with us, tell us what you want to see in here this year. We'll do our best to make it happen for you. That's the end of part 1. Thanks for following us here on the Open Look Podcast and the Open Look on YouTube. My name is John for David Hanna. We'll see you next time.